Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online video. You guys haven't heard, they're going to be doing a big test on the not PTS, on the live servers, where they're actually going to be shutting down all proc sets and activation sets on Cyrodiil for 3 weeks. And this is the post where they talk about it. So let's go ahead and we're going to kind of skim through this. So this is last year we ran a series of tests on the live mega servers in an effort to identify potential solutions for the ongoing performance issues in Cyrodiil. You can read full details here. I'll put a link. I'll open the link, and then I'll post it in the video if you guys want in the description below. You can read it yourself. Our previous rounds of testing in Cyrodiil last year concluded with some interesting data that pointed us towards various avenues to explore for both future tests and long-term solutions. However, those tests did not provide a definitive "this will fix all the things" solutions. We did find that slowing down calculations on the server per combat action does indeed help with performance, but again, not an appreciable amount where it could be a permanent solution. More tests are necessary to follow various branches of thought regarding server performance and combat calculations. As such, we will be performing at least one more test where we are affecting how much information is processed per combat action by limiting item proc sets in Cyrodiil. So, alright, so if you guys don't know what a proc set is, it's any set that when you use it, it doesn't just proc damage, it has a chance of proccing other effects. Like there's one that the 5-piece bonus. So this is just 5-piece bonus things that they're changing, not the whole set. Like, no, you'll still be able to use sets, but the 5-piece bonus will basically be like it doesn't activate. So the way it works is the 5-piece bonuses on most sets will have things like you need a one-handed sword and shield equipped to gain this weapon damage. You need to have, those are activation sets. That means it has to calculate you have that active, and then it has to calculate each skill you use pertaining to that thing. This goes for frost damage, destruction staff damage, ice staff damage, resto staff power, all that stuff. And a lot of people don't realize how many sets are unaffected by that. So the next section, on February 15th, we are disabling item set bonuses outside of pure stat gains. This means any item set which has a proc or condition which is driven by an ability, we have the ability disabled. This includes item sets like Seducer, as a set requires magic cost abilities by reduces magic cost abilities by 10%. That reduction of cost is done via an ability. Why they have it attached to ability, I don't know, which has a check anytime you cast an ability. So, it's stupid. Other sets, such as Hunting's Rage, is completely unaffected by this change, as it simply grants stats without requirements. And these are all the sets in the game that are not affected by the test. So these are sets you will be able to use and actually gain the full 5-piece perspective. That's it. 22 sets. Not 30, not 40, 22 out of 400 plus sets. Think about that. 22 sets out of 400 plus sets. That is mind-numbingly stupid. There's only 22 sets that aren't affected by these actions. There should be a lot more. No offense to the devs, but there should be a lot more. In fact, it should be almost a half-and-half ratio. But it's not. Not even... And this is the worst one. You know what else? What other set's not on this list? Slime Craw. Slime Craw gives you crit chance to both spell and physical. Spell and physical. Crit chance. and then it gives you 8% damage done by giving you minor berserk. It doesn't have any activation. It's the only monster set that doesn't. But it's not on the list. Because how many people would use it? Everyone. Everyone would incorporate it into their build in some way, because it would be the only monster set that works. When you look at how this is going to work, so you're going to have 2 5-piece sets like Amber Plasm and, say, Crafty Alfique. Then you're going to have access to a 3-piece set, but you're only going to be able to use 2 pieces of it. So it's going to be something like Endurance, Willpower, Agility, or the Grace of the Ancients, or even Trainee. But you're only going to be able to get 2 of the 3-piece bonus from it. Or you're going to have to take a 5-piece, a 3-piece, and part of or you're going to be able to take 2 different 3 pieces and count 2 pieces from it. So like you'll have one that might be Willpower with like Grace of the Ancients, but that's it. Like that is literally the extent of the set options you will have in Cyrodiil for the next 3 weeks, starting Monday. So this literally changes how PvP works in a big way across both, especially if it applies to both no CP and CP PvP in Cyrodiil. I think if we were going to do this, it should have applied to all areas of PvP, Battlegrounds, Cyrodiil, and Imperial City. So this way they could get a more definitive idea with small group play, large scale play, and also the Imperial City with the way Imperial City works. I think that would have been a much better idea. But they go on to say, at this time we are planning to this test last for 3 weeks, and we'll let everyone know when we have next steps locked in. So the next steps of testing. And then it says when we test, this test begins on February 15th, we are also reverting the prior test where abilities cast on allies were restricted to group targets only. It will now be lifted. You can cast, like if you have rapid regeneration, you can cast it, and instead of it only affecting your group, it'll affect other players as well that are nearby. So it's going to be really interesting. Ball groups are going to become a thing again. Like big-time ball groups. So this restriction will be removed until further notice. Abilities that target and can be triggered by players outside of your group will once again function. Because it didn't show enough of an effect on the testing. Now, the other crazy thing about this is there's 10 pages of comments, guys. I read through 7 of them. And I have to say, not a lot of people are happy. Because a lot of people rely on proc sets to maximize their damage. But now they're going to have to go with literally just skill play. And they're going to have to beat others with that. How many people are going to be really tanky when they go with Fortified Brass and, say, Plague Doctors on their builds to be tanks? And, say, take Endurance as well to get that extra max health? Or how many people are going to take Drugging Hulk with something like Spriggans and then the 2-piece of Agility to get the max stam and just stack a ton of stam? How many people are going to do that with Magicka with the Spinner's Garments and, say, Mother Sorrow isn't all magic. I think it's like crit. Leviathan is the crit. There's one that's like this. I think it's Crafty Alfique. That's all max Magicka. Like that one, along with Willpower and Spinner's Garments. How many people are going to play with just a ton of mag? And these are the things that they're looking at. They're looking at how not these sets are going to affect the game, but how the reduction of procs and those calculations affect Cyrodiil. And I think they're going to see a large performance upgrade or performance hit, like they're gonna see like a performance increase, but they're gonna still see a decrease because of player, um, like how many players are on each instance of Cyrodiil. We don't know. I mean, they've told us there's a cap of how many players are in Cyrodiil. Um, and there is something else I want to talk about here, but I really don't want to go against like the devs here. But there is something that I do. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and talk about it anyways. So, if you guys don't know, when this game was before it was first released, they showed a lot of gameplay videos and a lot of videos of the game in action and talking about like how you'll be able to play with your friends in dungeons and all this. A lot of those videos were recorded using the Hero engine as the main engine for the game. They said they did that because they were still working on their home house engine at the time, their own in-house engine. And the game literally used to say the Hero engine. You know, like when you would launch the game, it'd say Bethesda Softworks. It would say Havoc and Hero engine. It said that for a very long time, and eventually that went away because supposedly they had their own engine in play. But I know something about the Hero engine a lot of people don't, and that is that Star Wars The Old Republic's built on the Hero engine. And Star Wars The Old Republic had a planet called Ilum, which was like Cyrodiil. It was a PvP area. You had to be level 50 to play there. It was very, very much played in when the first year the game was out. Eventually, the devs had to shut down the size of PvP areas in those locations and also had to make them instance-based because of the fact of how much performance issues they had with the way the Hero engine worked with the large-scale PvP. And they didn't have things like catapults, ballistas, and all that. They literally just had players fighting each other, and because of the amount of things that was going on, it would lag out, and there was no way to do PvP. There was, but there wasn't. They fixed it over the long term, but they disabled Ilum completely, and Ilum has never returned to being a PvP area. So the PvP areas in the game, the way they work now is they're all instance-based, and they can only hold a certain amount of players in them. So it's like those areas become battlegrounds, but no PvPers play the game. Like for those areas, they play like the actual arena battles for PvP, and nobody does open world PvP anymore whatsoever. Not even if you play on the PvP servers, is there very much PvP. In fact, I think there's only one PvP server left out of like 10. And I don't even know if it's like there's PvP on it because I don't play there. Like, I quit trying to play the PvP in the game once all that stuff happened, except for playing in the arenas. And so I'm wondering if the engine they built wasn't based on the Hero engine itself. Like, they took the Hero engine just like BioWare did. They got the Hero engine and basically rebuilt it to fit their design needs. And that's why they say they don't use the Hero engine anymore, is because they rebuilt it and didn't realize the amount of problems that it had. One of the biggest problems Hero engine had was it was made for no PvP games, basically. It was designed for role-playing game, like more role-playing than PvP. And the devs have never fixed the engine for PvP. Like, the people have tried to make PvP games with it, and every single one of them has been shut down. And that's because the game can't calculate the amount of actions going on, it was never designed to work that way. It was designed to work in small groups or raid groups, not 4 raid groups going against, or 3 raid groups going against each other, kind of thing, you know? And I think that's a lot of the problems that they're seeing with the performance could be coming from that. But again, I'm just speaking hypothetical here. I don't know the engine, like how their in-house engine works. I'm just going off of my own experience of playing Star Wars The Old Republic and what happened there with their use of the hero engine and why that game fell apart so bad with PvP. It had the same issues as what they're saying this side, this game has. A lot of it, they had to literally shut down their PvP area because they couldn't, their system, the engine couldn't handle it. And it worked great in arena PvP where you had 4 against 4 or 8 against 8, but that's it. Any more than that, and it seemed like it got worse. And it's one of the reasons why you don't have large-scale PvP in Star Wars The Old Republic anymore. Now again, I'm not saying that's the case. What I'm saying is, if it is that they used the hero engine, remodified it, or redid the programming to it to make it fit their needs, that could be what the problem really is, and that could be why Cyrodiil has having so many problems with combat calculations. And that's probably why it's taken them so long to figure this out, is because you would really literally have to dismantle the engine itself, break it down to its most simplest code, and reprogram or recode the PvP part of the engine to make sure that it worked to the design that you're looking for. It's one of the reasons why they use the Havoc engine for destructible environments in Cyrodiil, because it's got a really good engine for that, but it's nowhere near like the Snowdrop, or I forget the engine that they use for Battlefield. It doesn't work as good as those with destructible environments. Snowdrop, hands down, has the best destructible environment code I've seen. And that's because of the way it works. The Battlefield crew has a really good engine for their destructible environment. The Havoc engine has a good destructible environment code, but it is very limited. Like, they could probably make it to where you could destroy castles completely in Cyrodiil, or keeps completely, but they don't do that. They only have it set to certain sections of the walls, and then like the surrounding nodes, towers, and that's it. Like, they don't have everything set up to be destructible. Like, not even the ground is destructible. And in game like the Snowdrop engine, they actually have the ground set up to be destructible. So it would be interesting if they were to use the Snowdrop engine for that. But the Snowdrop engine is a game engine completely. It's not just for destructible environments. It's for the whole game. And I don't know how, it might work out really well for this, but it would be up to them to use it. But yeah, I think this plan right here, though, if this shows any kind of performance improvements, are they going to go making drastic changes to sets across the board? That's my concern. Because they would. I mean, you got to think, how many different sets are used in Cyrodiil? Almost every set in the game, except for some trial sets. Even trial sets are being used in Cyrodiil now. And so it makes sense for them to look at all the different sets and how they affect the game, and possibly touch on all of them. I mean, it could be something that they do. The fact that I just don't get this part. So that reduction cost is done via an ability. Like, I don't get why it would be an ability and not a coded calculation. Like, why it has to activate off of an ability that's built into the set and not into the set's code, and not based on a check that checks to see if you're casting a magic ability and then reduces the cost. Instead of, you're going to cast this ability, we're going to have the system, the set use an ability to see if you're using an ability. That makes no sense. No offense to the devs, it makes no sense why you would do that, or even have that attached to a set. So, and then the thing like Hunting's Rage, yeah, it's not checking anything. It's automatically flat stuff being added to your character, and it's one of the things I've said. They need to add more sets like this, and I've said it before about things like Spriggans. They need to have things like this, but it be things like we have some of those new sets, that have like the armor pin, and then it has like weapon damage, and it has like stamina. So I have stamina, weapon damage, weapon pin, and then if you add something to it that's just a straight up increase in penetration or increase in weapon damage, like a high version of those kind of sets are just as needed as proc sets. And I also think if they cut proc sets down to you can only have one equipped, I think it would also cut down on a lot of different things. And when I say proc sets, I mean activation sets. Add more sets like this to the game, and like I said, it should have been half and half. There should have been half the sets are sets that don't have any procs attached to them, and then half the sets are. Like, why don't we have a monster set that gives you well, we do, and I don't know why it's not up here, and that is the Chudins, Mighty Chudin. Mighty Chudin gives you literally just flat stats, but it gives you an ability that's active all the time, which is the Major Resolve. So, if they changed it to give you the resistances equal to Major Resolve flat, but had a check in there to make sure that you can't activate Major Resolve, not an ability, not like, oh, this gives you Major Resolve, but in a thing that says, hey, if you cast Major Resolve, it doesn't apply because this already matches it. Then that might work in the code. I mean, it depends. Again, like, I know the Hero Engine, I've worked with it, so I know how the coding works to some degree. And I haven't like literally designed with it or like I've used it, and so I know how some of it works. And I'm wondering, like, if they did that, could they calculate it that way, or just make it to where it gives you literally just the resistances and just that, and here you go, you can wear this, and you're gonna get all these extra resistances. And if you cast Major Resolve, it's just going to put you over the cap because there's a cap of 33,000 resistance. Like, or like Slime Crawl. Do sets like that where it gives you the crit and it gives you Minor Berserk at all times. But Minor Berserk is an ability, so it would have to be something that is simple like that. Not something where when you attack, like weapon sets, no offense to the devs, they're nice because they affect certain abilities we have, but it's got to make sure we have those abilities being used to gain the benefit. So it's got to check that and to activate. And I think that could be a problem as well. They've added too many sets into the game like that. And just doing things like a sword and shield set, 2-piece set, where it gives you increased block cost reduction. Just that, boom. There you go. or reduce block cost reduction, reduced block damage. If they were to do that, then it compensates for other things. Like, for example, the DK gets 10% block cost reduction as a natural passive. Other classes don't, but they'd have a set that does. These are things that they could look at where it doesn't have to be calculated by an ability or another check in place. It's just you automatically get this as a flat 10% block cost reduction. Or they could do a dual wield set that literally just increases your damage with, like, instead of increasing your damage by weapon damage itself, but instead it increases the damage of an ability by a percentage. It's got to do less checks, even though it's still got to do checks. Like, it's still got to, go through like an ability check to make sure you have that going. But if they did that, it would make more sense. Like, say, rapid strikes increases the damage of rapid strikes, not stacking, but just every hit of rapid strikes by 2%. Boom. Whack. Done. Or 4%, or 6%, or 8%, whatever. Doing things like that would be good. Not when you activate rapid strikes, you get 286 weapon damage applied to all your abilities. Because then it's got a lot more things to check. But if it's just a straight, hey, you get this for rapid strikes, you get this for whirlwind, you get this for wall of elements, then it has less things to check. But the more you add to a set for it to have to check, like Alkosh is a great one for this. Alkosh has to make sure that you activate a synergy in order to do the damage. Then it has to reduce the damage of the resistances of the enemies. It's got to make 2 checks. One to make sure that the ability hits the enemy, which does the damage, and then reduces that enemy's resistances. So it's got to do those 2 checks. And then it's also got to make sure that it puts the resistances at the equivalent level necessary to reduce. So, so it's not, they're not over penetrating kind of thing. Because it will just go to 0 resistances. So that's a lot of things they gotta look at here, and I think this is a step in the right direction to see if they need to make those changes. But there's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of sets that. There's a lot of sets that have proccing conditions, or like they say, has a proc or condition which is driven by an ability. That's a lot of sets that have that. If you think about it, 400 plus sets and only like literally a handful are not affected by this. No. That's just stupid. Because you got to think, the Slime Craw, like, you can have it active, like Minor Berserk at all times, but if you're a Nightblade, you have a skill that gives you Minor Berserk. The Warden has a skill that gives you Minor Berserk, so it would have to make sure that you don't have Minor Berserk already active to give you the Minor Berserk from the helm, so it's got to calculate that. And it's just a minor calculation. So I think the sets that they'll probably see that this does have an impact on the performance of PvP, but then they'll have to do a test with different types of sets in order to get the exact sets that are causing the performance issues, and then adjust those, and then test again with all the changes to make sure that there's like the other sets and the new sets combination don't have things. But I think having the sets be like you can only have one proc set equipped anywhere in the game would be much better. Like sets that proc damage. So like if you have a monster set like Veladrits, you couldn't have Reliquin with it. The reason for that is because Reliquin is also a proc set. It procs extra damage. So you could use Reliquin with like Hunting's Rage and say Slime Craw or sets similar to those, but you couldn't use, you couldn't use Reliquin with another proc set. I think this would help the performance of the game also. And I think the devs are afraid to do that because so many people rely on proc sets. Like, I use 2 proc sets on my Tempest Barbarian build. And I really like that. But because it increases my damage output immensely. Like, whenever I take damage, I deal lightning damage. Whenever I deal damage, I do the Stone Fist. So I have these 2 ways of proccing damage, and I like it for PvE and PvP. But that's where the problem lies, is it's got to calculate those 2 different procs based on when I get hit or when I deal damage, and that's a higher calculation. If it was just I had the Thunderbug equipped and not the other one, I could have a set like Hunting's Rage, and then I could have a monster set that does something, that doesn't proc damage or heal or anything like that. They could literally do things like add new sets to the game that don't have any proc requirements. It would take a lot of engine or imagination, but I think they could do it. I honestly think that if they put their imagination to it, they could decrease the amount of proc sets we have in the game and how many we can equip to 1 each. Even in Cyrodiil, you can only have 1 equipped. And I think it would cut down on the performance issues, and I think it would also bring the floor and ceiling to be more in line with each other. Like, you would still have max level players doing more DPS, like people with max CP and stuff would be doing more DPS than a player at level 50 or even 49, but it wouldn't be like some ungodly amount, because that's what proc sets do, is they give you an ungodly amount of DPS. People don't realize Reliquin is actually super OP, and when you have max penetration on an enemy and you're using something like Veladrith's, the Reliquin, and you're using another set that complements it, you can actually push your DPS to super high numbers because of those proccing damage, and then the proccing of your enchants on your weapons with light attacks, or even certain abilities, certain weapon abilities that do stacking, that do damage over time, will proc your enchants as well. So like Rending Slashes and that. I think enchants should only proc off of light and heavy attacks, period. It fixes that problem. And it also reduces floor and ceiling. And it doesn't, it's nice to have that there's a power gap between new players and veteran players. It's nice to have that. But when you have a game where anyone can join PvP starting at level 10, you want people to be on equal footing in their natural power, like their stat power, not necessarily their passive powers or passive capabilities, but their natural stat powers. And they've got it in a good place right now where they get that, and they can compete to some degree, but they're never going to be the top dogs. Like, that will always be the people that are at max level and have really good gear set, like a good combination of gear sets and things like that. But even in Battlegrounds, you run across a lot of people running proc sets and are super tanky. The other problem is that we're not limited to the choices in how we mix and match our gear. But if they were to do this, I think we would see and limit the amount of like proc conditions on sets, and limit, like I said, us down to 1 proc set per thing, and then our light and heavy attacks are the only thing that can activate our enchants, period. I think we would see a loss in DPS, but I think we'd see a more balanced game in the long run. Both PvE and PvP would become more balanced. Now, a lot of people in PvP would probably still stack high weapon damage, high stamina, you know, high health, and they would still try and stack for high resistance. But I don't think it would be as easy if the devs did away with a lot of these proc conditions, because then it comes down to skill. And then if they also, and I know a lot of people would be mad about this, if they also removed the battle spirit or redid the whole battle spirit thing to where battle spirit, that's other calculations the game has to make. Even though it's flat across the board, it's still a calculation that it has to have for that zone in particular. Removing battle spirit might fix a lot of the problems with performance. Might be some of the problems with performance, but also introducing new ways for players to kill others. Like I said, having sets that have even more penetration than what, you know, things like Spriggan's Thorns has. Like, do another set like Spriggan's Thorns, but it has stamina, weapon damage, penetration, and more penetration. Then these players are going to be able to reach higher penetration values, which will kill players that stack nothing but resistances even faster. Get rid of crit resist. No offense to the players. Get rid of crit resist completely. And now players, you know, they've got to learn how to avoid those crits, because those high crits is what's going to kill them. Remove battle spirit, remove crit resist, done. PvP becomes more balanced, because PvP would play like PvE. And PvE would play like PvP. So they wouldn't have to struggle so much with balancing out certain things. Combat would be super fast paced, especially when you get into the higher CP areas, and even gear, like the gear combinations. But it would make PvP fast paced. It would make it feel like you're really in a fight, and you have to be really cautious. Like, you would want warriors on the front line. You'd want your medium armor at ranged, and only in close combat when they needed to be. You would want your your light armor really at ranged to take out those the heavy armor users. But then there is some heavy armor users which are still going to be really hard to kill, like DKs, Templars, Breton tanks, because of their natural higher resistance with spell damage and stuff. And then you add a race in there that gets higher spell damage to frost or fire, dark elves, and Nord. And they're even harder to kill, and they make up those percentage losses. But then you look at other things, like if they added more sets like this to the crafted section, and we had like mostly crafted sets were things like this, and drop sets were more like the things that had the proccing condition effects and things like that. I think that would also balance the game out a little bit more, to allow more variety, but also do monster sets like that, do the weapon sets like that. Make it to where weapon sets only apply to the ability used, not to overarching skills. So like whenever you use rapid strikes, you get that increased weapon damage. Not all your abilities get the increased weapon damage, only rapid strikes does, or only ringing slashes, or only blade cloak. I know a lot of people wouldn't like that, but that's the way they should work. So it's only calculating for that one ability when used, instead of multiple different abilities, calculating each time you hit with one that extra weapon damage. It makes the calculations a lot easier, and it would create probably a much better performance fix. But these are just my opinions. I mean, I'm looking at the game not only from a player perspective or even a QA perspective, but also a developer perspective. You know, they're trying to make their game work, and they really want Cyrodiil to be a good place, but I think they introduced too many problems with the sets that they created. And how do you alleviate that? Well, you redo it. Like, if they had monster sets say that anytime, instead of anytime you dealt damage with a certain ability or anything like that, but instead monster sets was anytime you dealt damage of any kind, the set would activate the damage it does or the shield it gives you or whatever. And if they did it like that, it would probably be a lot more performance friendly than you got to activate a certain ability a certain way. Like, you got to do direct damage, you got to do a critical hit, you got to do this, you got to do that. If it was just any damage, boom, done. And it activates every so many seconds, boom, done. And just like enchants, make it attached to light and heavy attacks only, boom, done. It's only calculating on light and heavy attacks to proc those enchants and not on the abilities themselves, the weapon abilities themselves. This saves the performance of the system because it's only calculating that. Instead of like Blade Cloak, every time Blade Cloak ticks damage, it's got to calculate, does it do the proc? And if you're doing a light attack, it's got to calculate that as well at the same time. You know, if you happen to get your light attack right when it procs, it's got to calculate proccing the enchant for your light attack, and it's got to calculate proccing the enchant for that. And then on top of that, if you have any things like Reliquin going or a monster set that procs damage, it's got to calculate those as well. Because they could be on the same time as that tick. So it's like, there's all these different things that the game's trying to calculate all at once. And you got to remember, it's doing this for every player in the game. That's in that zone, in that instance. So if you have 100 players in Cyrodiil fighting in different sections, it's got to calculate every one of those players no matter what. No matter what they're doing, it's got to calculate. It's got to calculate all those different subsystems, you know, sub-procs and ability things and do all those checks before it can actually proc the condition. But it does it at such rapid speed that that's why I think we're seeing the performance drop. Is it's trying to calculate all this stuff at such rapid speed. That's why you have people who get things like caught in animation loops, or they get caught in attack stances, or they get caught in, or even just dumped from the game because the game's like, I can't calculate your shit right now. Boom, get out of here. And that could be why a lot of these performance issues are happening. But again, I'm not a developer, guys. I really am not. I'm somebody who wanted to develop games, but I just didn't make it far enough. And I'm cool with that, you know? This is what I like doing. I enjoy talking to you guys. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you think this will fix the problem? Or do they need to just change Cyrodiil completely to a PvE zone with minor PvP pockets that are instance-based, where you can only have a max of like 12 players in it? Would that be better? Because right now, without knowing the exact reasoning why all these problems are happening, like, as players, we just can assume different things. The devs are the ones with all the information, and we have to go on their judgment. And I can tell you, if this is what they find, that this works out and brings the performance up to a really good level, expect to see a lot of sets change. Like, literally changed across the board. I don't think we're going to see a lot of proc sets anymore. I don't think they're going to introduce a lot of proc sets anymore. And I think if they also do this, if they can do this, I think they could also implement that as a widespread thing. Like, if you're going to play Cyrodiil, you can only use these sets. You're limited to these sets only. You can't use anything beyond this. Which might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. We don't know yet because we don't know what's going on other than what they say here. So, but yeah, I'm going to test it. I don't know how much testing time I'll have because I'll be bouncing between here, PTS, and other things that I'm doing right now. I'm gonna try and get on and do some of this because I have some of these sets, and a lot of these sets aren't really hard to get. Trainees like super easy, Beekeeper's pretty easy, Crafty Elfie's fairly easy. I want to say I think I have a full set of it anyways. Rugger Hulk, got to run a dungeon. Fortified Brass can be crafted. Grace of the Ancients you can buy pretty cheap usually. Hunting's Rage craftable. Impregnable is one that drops in Cyrodiil, so can be bought usually. Juliana's craftable. Leviathan drops in a dungeon. Mother Sorrow, Overland, Spinner's Garments, and Spriggan's Thorns are both Overland and really easy to get, actually. So I might go farming Spriggans, and cross it with Shacklebreaker crafted. That might be a good combination on like a Nightblade or a DK. I would say more on a Nightblade. And then throw agility on it, just for the extra agility. Put like health and stamina chance on the gear. Maybe do 3 health, 4 stam. It's not perfect, but hey, with the limited time they're giving us for the test, I could do that. I might do that. I'll wait and see, guys. Honestly, like right now, I'm too caught up on the PTS to. I really want to test this. I want to see if I see a performance update. Like, if I can do a good burst attack with going into a combo kind of thing, and I can pull it off without any hitches, that'll be the day. Like, that'll be the day I jump up and down. Because that's my big problem. Like, I don't have a lot of performance issues when I'm in Cyrodiil, honestly. What I have is I have a lot of hitch issues. Like, when I'm doing, like, a roll dodge into a bar swap to bow from dual wield. I find issues there, like, it'll hitch. It'll, like, pull me, like, when I go to bar swap after I come out of the dodge roll. It either won't bar swap and I gotta hit the key again, or I've got to do the bar swap, then roll dodge. Otherwise, it gets like locked in this weird, like funky animation thing, and where it doesn't bar swap, even though it shows me with my bow, it shows me with the dual wield, and it's like what? And then I'll switch to my dual wield, and it'll show me with the dual wield, and then I'll switch back to the bow, and it works. But yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I'm super excited, honestly, to see how the results turn out, because I hope they give us actual information on the test results, saying, "Hey guys, yeah, this is a big performance hit. All these sets, and we're gonna have to look at ways we can fix this. Give us a couple months. We want to do some more tests just to make sure." And then if they test something like you can only have one proc set, and they find it increases performance, that might be something that they could do. I honestly think that removing the crit chance and removing the battle spirit would improve PvP by a lot. But that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people would be like, "Oh, dude, you don't know what it's like in PvP." I played PvP, okay? I played Cyrodiil, I played Battlegrounds, I played Imperial City. I know what it's like. It's not my cup of tea, but I know what it's like right now. And I can tell you, I've fought some of these unkillable tanks and killed them. And no, it's not easy. You have to wear their resources out, which some of them have ungodly resources. And changing some of these things to where you have sets that aren't proccable, and then taking away a lot of the proc conditions, because I noticed when I was fighting that person, they were using like Selines with another set, like the one that creates the little volcanoes whenever they deal damage, and then another one that did damage on top of that, and that's how they were dealing so much damage to me, with a sword and shield holding block most of the time, because all they had to do was hit me with light attack or hit me with a weapon ability to get those things to proc, and I would take like 15k damage all of a sudden. It was like, what the hell? Well, that's why. Because they were proccing all these conditions. And I do think Oblivion damage does need to be toned down a little bit if they're going to have it in the game and have it part of the game. That needs to be toned down or completely removed from the game because it is insanely overpowered. But I do like this. I mean, I do like this that they're looking into the problems. They're trying to figure it out. They don't, they've got an idea of what's causing the performance issues, but they're not 100%. This is, again, a way for them to do it. And the reason why they're testing in the live environment is because that's where they're going to get the most information or feedback from. Not just from player feedback, but also feedback from their system itself with the things they're going to be watching and seeing. And if they see, like I said, a massive performance increase, expect more sets to go the direction of this. I promise you, because that is going to be the biggest problem this game has. And a lot of us have said it in the past. The more sets they add to the game, yes, it offers more options, but it also limits the amount of it also can create more problems, and that's what it's showing. Is it's literally creating more problems than it is helping. And even though it just fixed performance on Cyrodiil, it might also fix the performance that some people have in PvE, like doing dungeons and constant crashing and all that kind of stuff, because you have these people running like 3 proc sets in a dungeon with 4 people in a confined area, and the game's calculating the space that you're in and all that, and it's got to calculate like the movement of the enemy actions, your actions, and that could be what's causing these people to get dumped, is things like that. And it could also explain a lot of performance issues with the older systems as well, like people running older systems, like not just older consoles but also older PCs. And why the game doesn't run as well is because of proc sets. Now I'm just being again a hypothetical there, but it's if this shows true performance increase like a lot, then yeah, they would have to do that. They would have to look at every set in the game and see how they could fix them so they're not there's not as much activation. And the only way I can see them fixing that is limiting to how many proc sets we can have equipped. 1. And then limiting like how activation of our enchants work, limiting the activation of how weapon sets work. Limiting them to only certain things, so it's not trying to calculate for multiple things, might be what's causing a lot of the problems. But I could be wrong again. But that's it for the video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. And if you do subscribe, I do suggest clicking on that notification bell to be notified when I post new videos. This kind of helps us both out. Other than that, thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.